Okay, well, thank you for having me. Um, as Kate said, my name is Rachel Fees. I'm a social worker with Lutheran Senior Services, and I've been with Lutheran Senior Services for 5 years now, 4 of those years with Hospice. And let me just tell you a little bit about Lutheran Senior Services for anybody who's not familiar with us. We're a nonprofit agency. We provide services in both Missouri and Illinois, and we have sort of three branches of care that we provide. We have affordable housing, which is independent living apartments for seniors 60 and older. We also operate what we call continuing care facilities, which has campuses that have everything from independent living apartments to skilled nursing care for seniors. And then the third branch is in-the-home services, which provides everything from outreach social workers, which go out and work with seniors and older adults in the home, to home health, private duty, hospice. And we provide services both, for our communities of Lutheran Senior Services, but in-home services, we can actually go out and provide services to anyone in the community or different nursing home communities. And I think later on this week, Karen will probably send out some information that I provided to her about just all the services that Lutheran Senior Services offers, because I could spend forever talking about that. But tonight the focus is on hospice care, and also providing some kind of tips and strategies on facilitating a conversation about hospice care with a caregiver, with a member of the support group, or just with an individual. And I think before you can start that conversation, it helps to just have a good background and understanding of what hospice care is. And I certainly want this to be a conversation, so if anybody has any questions as I'm going through and talking, please send them to me, and we can just kind of see where this topic goes. But so just starting off, first of all, what is hospice care? It's a philosophy of care that provides for comfort measures, allowing an individual to maximize quality of life at the end of life. Hospice recognizes death as a natural part of life. Hospice neither seeks to prolong nor to hasten death, but just to allow the natural disease process to occur. And hospice is a shift from curative to comfort measures. So we don't do any type of curative treatment, but we will manage any physical, emotional, psychosocial, spiritual, or social needs that an individual is having. So hospice starts with a doctor's order, in which a doctor makes the determination that an individual, based on their disease process, has 6 months or less of life expectancy. And my understanding is that your group works primarily with caregivers and individuals who have a diagnosis of cancer. And certainly that's a huge area that hospice provides support and help for. But I always like to let individuals know that hospice actually can provide care for individuals facing a range of illnesses that are, again, at the end stages of whatever that illness is. Everything from end-stage heart disease to end-stage Alzheimer's, just COPD, just a huge range. And there's a lot of benefits to hospice. So one of the main things is that it's a model of care in which the patient and the family really directs the plan of care. As part of hospice, you receive a whole team of individuals that are there to provide support and education. But really the patient, as long as the patient is able to voice their wishes and to express their desires, stays in control of the types and frequency of treatment and management of symptoms that are provided. And in the event that the patient is unable to make decisions for themselves, then we go to the power of attorney or next of kin to make those decisions. But it's very cool in that way that it's really focused on what the needs of the patient and the family member are. The other thing about hospice is that a patient always retains the right to choice. Generally, most hospices have the same core services, which includes a medical director, a registered nurse, a social worker, and a chaplain. And then after that, there can be a lot of variety in terms of the services that a hospice provides. Some of the other standards are bereavement care, volunteers, home health aides, There's everything from speech, occupational, physical therapists. There's some hospices that are able to provide services such as massage therapy, pet therapy. I mean, there's such a huge range. And when I speak with families or patients, when they're starting to think about hospice care, that's one of the things that I always talk with them about, is that their right to choice and making a choice that fits best with who they are as an individual and who their support system is, whether that's family members or significant others, because there is a lot of variation. And one of the things that I have learned through my work with hospice, I work with an incredible team, is just that everyone approaches death and end of life very differently, and it's a very unique experience. And although we don't like to think about kind of shopping around for services such as hospice or funeral planning or things like that, it is important for individuals to know that they have a choice and they can choose what is the best fit for them. So I just want to talk about some of the benefits of hospice care. That first of all, one of the really cool things about it is that it's holistic care. As I mentioned earlier, we're helping to manage any physical symptoms that a patient may have, from everything from pain issues to respiratory issues to nausea, vomiting, skin issues, things like that. Anything that's considered a comfort measure, we're going to manage. But besides any physical issues that a patient may be experiencing, we're also going to look at the social, emotional, spiritual issues that an individual may be facing. Sometimes what we encounter when we're working with patients is they get to a point where they're very accepting of the disease process, they're very prepared for their death, and then there's this waiting period. There's kind of this expectation that once we accept what's going to happen, that okay, it's going to happen quickly. That's not always the case. Sometimes it feels like it can be a very long process in terms of decline and disease process. So just providing that support to the patient and also to the caregivers as well. Also, a lot of times I hear from the caregivers and significant others in the patient's life that it's so nice just to have a whole team of people there to help provide education, to answer questions, and to just check in and say, is what we're seeing? Are these changes normal? Are they not normal? Are there things we should be concerned about? So the hospice team is there to provide, education and support, and also to provide care. The next component of hospice is that it's supplemental care. So we can provide hospice pretty much anywhere an individual is, whether it's in their own home, a nursing home, an assisted living, living with a relative or somewhere else. But hospice is not there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Usually what happens is that our team will make visits on a scheduled basis several times a week. And depending on what's going on with that individual, the frequency of those visits can change. We also have a nurse on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if the patient was to have some type of crisis situation, there we go, okay. Some type of crisis situation, our nurse is available to triage the situation and come out and do a visit if needed. Also to make recommendations to whoever is the primary caregiver about how to manage what's going on. Other things about hospice, that I work mostly with older adults, so I'm most familiar with the Medicare hospice benefit. But most insurance companies do provide a hospice benefit, but there can be variations in terms of the type of coverage and services that an insurance benefit may cover. For example, the Medicare hospice benefit will also provide for any medications that the patient needs related to their terminal illness. We also provide for comfort measures, comfort medications. So there's no additional cost for hospice. And as I said, that does vary from insurance plan to insurance plan. We can also provide for durable medical equipment that can ensure the safety of the patient, help address kind of changes with the disease process that the patient may be going through, and also to help conserve energy and keep individuals strong. So again, that they can maximize the time that they have left. If utilizing a wheelchair maybe helps to conserve some energy so that patient can go out and have more energy to spend time with family and friends, then that's a good thing, and hospice will provide for that. One of the other great benefits about hospice is that we can also provide some respite care. As I mentioned earlier, hospice is supplemental care, and we recognize that for caregivers, it can be a very difficult process, emotionally and physically draining to provide care for a loved one at the end stages of life. So hospice is able to provide respite, either able to provide several days of care in a nursing home facility, or we also have volunteers as part of our hospice team who can go out and spend several hours with the patient, allowing maybe a spouse or another family member to have a few hours to either go to the doctor, take a walk, do things like that. As part of my work through hospice, I am the volunteer coordinator, so I work a lot with our volunteers as well, and just have been blessed to work with such an incredible group of volunteers. I've had several volunteers. I had this one man, what he would go is he would every, I think it was like the first or second Tuesday of the month, he would go and spend several hours with a patient that we had that had end-stage Alzheimer's disease. And that provided an opportunity for the wife, who was the caregiver, to go to attend bingo and play bingo at her church. Such a great opportunity for her to have that socialization and just to have a break from caregiving. And it also gave her a little bit of normalcy in her life, and just kind of gave her an opportunity to have, as I said, a little normalcy. So other things about hospice care, as I mentioned earlier, typically once an individual is ready for hospice care, they have a prognosis of 6 months or less based on disease process. Although patients are able to receive hospice for longer than 6 months. Again, sometimes this is going to depend on the type of insurance plan and the benefits offered from that particular insurance plan, but I can speak for Medicare that Medicare allows for an unlimited number of hospice days. So as long as the patient qualifies, they will receive hospice services. As I mentioned earlier, hospice services can be provided anywhere. Hospice is not a place, with the exception there are some inpatient hospices. For example, in St. Louis, on the campus of St. Anthony's Hospital, there is an inpatient hospice called DeGraff House. And in the St. Louis area, I know that's the only inpatient hospice, but I know in other parts of the country they do have some inpatient hospice centers. But for the most part, hospice is provided wherever the individual is residing. So just a few statistics on hospice care. The National Hospice and Palliative Care Organization, in 2011, 35% of hospice patients received hospice services for 7 days or less. And then also in 2011, about 27% of hospice patients received hospice services for 8 to 29 days. But the reality is that hospice can provide benefits for so much longer than just the last few days, last few weeks of life. It's also designed to provide services for the last months of life too. So, anybody have any questions at this time? Okay, well, we'll keep moving on. So now I just want to talk about some of the myths about hospice. Hospice is one of those things we don't ever really think about it until it comes very close to us. And I think in situations like that, it's very, when there's something we don't know about, it's very often that myths and stereotypes about the services can happen. So I just want to spend some time talking about that. So hospice does not mean giving up, meaning a patient does not have to be at a point where they are ready to die to accept hospice. They have to be at a point where they are ready for comfort measures. As I said, hospice is really, there's a lot of benefits that we can provide, a lot of support and education we can provide for individuals. Also, another myth about hospice is that when a patient signs into hospice that all medications are discontinued. Again, this is a myth. We really tailor medications based on the needs of that individual. And later on down the line, there's also a myth that hospice is about foregoing use of antibiotics. We actually often consider antibiotics to be a comfort measure, and we allow that to be a personal decision for the patient and the family to decide how they want to manage if they have any type of infection or anything like that. Another myth about hospice is that you have to change physicians. Hospices do have a medical director that provides oversight for the plan of care, but if a patient wishes to maintain their primary care physician, their oncologist, because we recognize that you may have a very important and lengthy relationship with that doctor. We can report to that doctor. We can get orders from that doctor. We can, in some cases, there's also a collaboration that happens between the patient's primary care physician and then the hospice medical director. In some cases, the primary care physician may ask that the medical director write only comfort measures. So there's a lot of ways that we tweak it again to meet the unique needs of every patient that we work with. Another myth about hospice, hospice staff are not 24/7 caregivers. We help educate and support whoever the primary caregivers is, from working in nursing homes. So if it's the nursing home staff is the primary caregiver for the patients, we're coordinating care plans with the nursing homes to ensure that we're doing everything to meet the comfort measures. To, again, if it's spouses or adult children or significant others that are providing care for that patient. Part of the job of the hospice social worker is having those conversations with the patient and then whoever they identify in their support system, whoever's involved in providing care, about what their care system is going to look like, who's going to be providing care for them, what does the patient want. So again, we're there to support the patient and family through all of this, but we're not there 24/7. Another myth about hospice is that an individual has to be at a point in which they're housebound, and that's not true. In fact, we encourage patients to participate and to continue their life and to do all the things that they want to and are able to do. We've had patients that go on lots of outings with family members. We had a woman that we provided service for last summer. She was able to, she was living with her husband in their own home, and one of her wishes before she passed away was to attend a family wedding in Colorado. So we worked with the patient and with her family, planning out this road trip, making sure that she had the equipment that she needed. She was on oxygen at that point, so we made sure that as they took this car trip that she would have sufficient supplies for oxygen. We also made connections with hospices in different states. So as she traveled across country, if she ran into a crisis situation, instead of having to go back to the hospital, she could contact one of those local hospices to provide care for her. She was able to go to the wedding, had an incredible time, and made it there safely and back. And she did end up passing away a couple weeks after the wedding, but it was just an incredible moment and such a celebration of life for her, and it really gave her a lot of hope and energy to be able to go do this. So it was very cool to be part of that process for her. So that is just kind of the general overview about hospice, some hospice myths, things like that. Anybody have any questions about anything I've covered so far? I mean, it's okay, it looks like Gina does. So I'm just pausing and it looks like okay. Oh, tell me more about the networking between states. So what we do is we contact hospices in those different areas. And you're going to ask me, and to be perfectly honest, I don't know the specific details, but what happens is, as she traveled through, let's see, Kansas and then into Colorado, we made contacts with 2 different hospices, and I apologize, I can't remember the names of those hospices, and gave her those phone numbers. And again, with those hospices, they had nurses on call 24 hours a day. So regardless of where she was or what time of the day that she was traveling through those states, those were the hospices that she would contact. Again, this individual had Medicare, so Medicare provided for all of her hospice benefits. So there was no, additional cost to her to make this arrangements. This is just as part of the hospice consents, we have an individual sign a consent to release any protected health information. So we were able to share, if needed, any of the individual's protected health information with these hospices. So I don't know, Gina, did that kind of answer your question? Okay, very good. Anybody else have any other questions? Okay, we'll just type them in as you. So the next thing is I just want to spend some time talking about if someone would approach you about hospice and how to kind of facilitate a conversation about that. One of the most important skills, and I'm sure anyone who's participated in a support group, as you know, that listening is probably the biggest job that we can offer. Being able to offer a non-judgmental, open, accepting ear is pretty much the best gift that we can give. I think in situations in which we don't have an answer or we don't know what to say, I think it's perfectly fine to say, it's okay, I don't know what to say, but I'm here to listen to you. But I always tell people, if you're going to offer that, you got to make sure that you're able to follow through with that. And what I mean by that is that you have to be prepared to be fully attentive to what that individual is saying. Kind of clear your mind of any distractions, if you're thinking about the grocery list or the chores or things like that, that's kind of stuff you got to put at the back of your mind and really give this individual your full attention to be able to have this conversation. Because emotionally, it can be a roller coaster. It is a very difficult time, and especially when an individual gets to that point where they're thinking about hospice care. So if a patient were to say, I'm so tired of these treatments, I don't think that they're helping anymore, a few possible responses would be, well, what does your doctor say about the treatments? How long does your doctor say you'll be on them? Have you talked with your doctor about quality of life issues? And with this last question, I'm going to kind of throw in my plug for advanced directives. As a social worker, one of the things I do is I spend a lot of time talking with patients and family members if they have not already created an advanced directive. And regardless of what age you are, the status of your health, everyone actually should have an advanced directive. This is your insurance policy that in the event you're not able to voice your desires about what type of care and treatment you would like if you had some type of health care crisis. And usually advanced directives have a couple different components to them. One part is going to be designating what's called a durable power of attorney. And this is an individual who you designate to speak on your behalf when you are not able to do so. And you want to make sure, typically we think of choosing someone that is very close to us, whether that's a spouse, a significant other, but you want to make sure that whoever you're choosing, that they are able to carry out your wishes. And so part of that, the second part of that, and the second part of advanced directives is creating a document called a living will, in which you specify specifically what treatments you do or do not want. And you can get as specific as you want. Do you want a feeding tube? Do you not want a feeding tube? In what situations do you want a feeding tube? Do you want a ventilator? Things like that. And then in what situations would it be okay for you to have those types of treatments? But after creating the living will, it's something you also need to sit down and have a conversation with whoever you designate as your power of attorney and go through with them and say, are you comfortable making those decisions for me if I'm not able to do so? Because that's something I also see a lot of times too, is that we often pick maybe our spouse. Well, for a spouse who is in the process of being a caregiver, but also dealing with their own grief and loss in regards to end-of-life issues, can be very emotionally difficult, just exhausting process to have to be the one to maybe sign like a DNR, do not resuscitate order, or to say to the hospital, don't insert a feeding tube because that's what my loved one wants. I also recommend with advanced directives that you update them, review them at least once a year, also with any major issues that maybe come up in your life. And at the end of this document, Linda, my coworker, is our other social worker, she and I put together some websites that have some really great information about advanced directives. So the other thing, moving on to the second part of this, if a patient says, you know, my doctor mentioned hospice today, some possible responses. How do you feel about that? What do you know about hospice, or what does hospice mean to you? And then thirdly, do you want to find out if this is a choice you should consider? And as I mentioned earlier when I talked about when you offer somebody the opportunity to be there and to participate in this conversation and giving that gift of listening, this also applies to offering to help them go on this journey to do some research. So some things that an individual can do. You know, if a patient wants to pursue inquiry, offer to look online with them. Again, we listed several websites, the National Hospice and Palliative Care Organization. Also, most states have their own hospice website as well that's affiliated with the National Hospice and Palliative Care Organization. Missouri has the Missouri Hospice and Palliative Care Organization. A lot of really great information about all the services that hospice provides. You can help locate local hospices in your area. Also, you know, an individual who's thinking about hospice, again, they need to talk about what's going to be the best fit for them. Faith-based, hospice affiliated with a medical center, a profit, not-for-profit. And how you would determine that, one would be to go ahead and interview several hospices, to contact the hospice directly, and, you know, if you have a list of questions, have those ready to go. In some cases, I know when we're also approaching something that we don't know a whole lot about, you don't even know what questions to ask. So the question you could start off with is, tell me, what does your hospice have to offer me and my loved ones, or my support system, or other individuals that are significant in my life? And that may lead you to having a conversation, or may lead you to other questions that you want to ask. And making a decision about hospice is a lot of times, when you have the time, it can kind of happen over multiple conversations, having some time to kind of sort through options, things like that. So again, listening is the most important help that you can provide. Then comes knowing the facts versus the myths. So that's kind of all the information I have about hospice and about my presentation. As I said, the very end of this handout is just kind of a resource page, websites for more information about hospice, and then some resources for advanced directives too. So does anyone have any questions? Gina's asking me, how do we get that list? I'm going to toss that over to Kelly.
I was going to say, Karen's going to mail the list. If she didn't attach it to your invite, she will mail the list out to everybody that's attended. So she's going to send you this actual presentation, both the quick reference guide that Kate went over, and this information from Rachel is going to probably be on the protected side of the website. This, because it has links in it, she will email out to you, and then you'll find them both in the resource area of the website. So look for it to come in email, and look for it on the back side of the website in the documents and the resources section.
All right, well, thank you all for giving me some time this evening to talk, and I think the work you guys are doing is really awesome. It's just incredible, so thank you for all that you do.
Well, and Rachel, we appreciate you coming. I know, thanks for hitting your time mark and being organized. So we always, you've done this time, Chief. I can tell. We appreciate having you as our guest, and we'll have you back sometime, I'm sure.
Okay, love to.